Well, this video has been long overdue. Hiya folks, welcome back to another video by yours truly. So guys, we're taking a little bit of a step out of the gaming house and breathing in the fresh air of heavy metal. A video about a heavy metal band. This band has defined what heavy metal is to me. Iron Maiden. It's my favourite band of all time and I have so much respect for the band itself. Along with other bands like Nightwish, Elysian, Adestria, Garbage, the Blaze Bayley Band, Paramore, etc. I just have to say that this band is legendary for the music that they've made, and quite honestly, it's changed the way how I look at music forever. And by that I mean I'm not listening to pop garbage anymore. So what is it about Iron Maiden that makes me like it so much? There's just something so amazing in the way that they write music and how they present themselves live. Along with that, you've got Eddie the Head, who is among my favourite characters in, well, pretty much all media actually. You could say the same for different mascots like Tankard's mascot and Disturbed's mascot, but I don't know, with Eddie it seems different. He's been turned into a robot, he's been a mummy, he's been a video game virus, he's been a corpse, and he's whatever this thing is, but it looks cool. You get the point though. So back in 2015, that's when I first listened to them, and it was actually thanks to my friend Nerman, who you might know as Toxic Vermin, when he showed me them long ago in 2015, and at the time I looked at them and thought they looked like they sound pretty good actually, I should give them a listen sometime. And it never really got to me until 2016 or early 2016 when I had first listened to the Book of Souls entirely on YouTube. I felt bad for doing that since it felt like I never really supported them, so I decided to buy most of their albums. By the way, you're welcome guys. I have 2 vinyl discs, 3 shirts, a signature of Blaze Bayley despite not being on an Iron Maiden album, but you know, it's they Maiden related. I have both of their games, the one on iPhone and Ed Hunter. And I also have the live chapter of the Book of Souls. So today I will rank albums from my personal favourite top 10 from the band, even though I don't think there has been a single bad album ever by them, to be honest. Yeah, maybe a few bad songs, but to be honest I don't think there's ever been a bad album. Please keep in mind the fact that this is all my opinions. I don't mean anything by it guys, it's just my personal take on the band itself, and if you have a top 10 that's different from mine then be sure to put it in the comments and I'll be sure to read it. So anyway, without further ado, let's get into number 10. At number 10 we have Killers. Now this album was a little bit of a tricky one to put on the list. I really do like this album, but at the same time I don't like it as much as others. I think number 10 is a really reasonable place to put it at, so I apologise if you really like this album, because I know even my good friend Nerman does a lot and it's within his top 5 I think. But yeah, to be honest, I've gave it a couple more listens, and whereas I think it's really good, I don't know, it's just hard to rank it amongst my favourite. Anyway, getting to the album itself, it is the most energetic album instrumental wise and vocal wise. And I really do think that the guitar riffs are excellent. The solos by Dave and Adrian on songs like Wrathchild and The Ides of March are just great. And those 2 songs really do they just smoothly transition into one another, and it's just fantastic as an opener, and it definitely is the best, or one of the best openers to an Iron Maiden album thus far. Drumming, I have to admit, is excellent from the unfortunately now deceased Clive Burr. Rest in peace Clive, and I really do especially admire his work on the title track, since the drums really give that impact that the song needed to accompany the guitars. As well as other songs like, say, Purgatory and, you know, Wrathchild, along with the title track. They just sound really alive. And the bass lines by Steve are pretty good. I feel as if Killers wouldn't have that same impact if it didn't have like the intro being played by Steve with the bass, because he really gives that, you know, tight bass sound when it opens, and then it just transitions into Adrian and Dave with the guitars. And then just Paul with the oh yeah part, you know, it just sounds fantastic. Paul Di'Anno is actually the first vocalist that the band ever had, and to be honest, he really brings out the energy in the songs like Wrathchild, Purgatory and Killers especially. On the first album I never really cared that much, but with Killers, I feel as if this was the album that defined Paul as a vocalist for me. The production of the album was great quality at the time. Like the first album was more of a punk rock, more rock kind of sound, and this album had just improved greatly over that. It felt as if they had just, you know, tweaked the guitars, just made it sound as heavy as possible, and for its time, it was pretty damn good, really good. The reason why it's so high on the list is because I don't find songs like Drifter, Innocent Exile, Twilight Zone, and Another Life to be as memorable as Killers, Wrathchild, Genghis Khan, Purgatory, The Ides of March, and Prodigal Son to be as, you know, memorable. I do like Paul as a vocalist, and this is the only Paul Di'Anno album that's going to appear on this list if you're wondering. And as a vocalist I think he's pretty good, but personally I prefer his Battlezone stuff, and I think his vocals fit more with like a punk rock or that type of genre, since the first album was slightly influenced by that genre with songs like Remember Tomorrow and Prowler. And I really think with those kind of songs it fit more with Paul Di'Anno's vocals, but he's a fine enough heavy metal vocalist, I won't take that away from him. Also, I heard about the recent injury that Di'Anno had, of Di'Anno recently being bound to a wheelchair, and I'm glad he's doing alright now with the recent release of Air Force's new song Sniper, which he actually appeared in, so I'm glad to see that Paul Di'Anno is still well and, you know, he's doing good. So would I recommend Killers? Absolutely. Killers is a great album. I would recommend it without a doubt. At number 9 we have A Matter of Life and Death. This album was a lot darker, much like The X Factor, and the chance they had taken had worked out extraordinarily well in my opinion. What I mean by this is, this album is written to be much more deeper in terms of writing on topics like politics, war, or even an entire song dedicated to a man who actually went missing in the 1970s. That of course is Benjamin Brieg. Bruce's vocals in this album are much more deeper to match the atmosphere of war and other meaningful topics. Overall, Bruce just sounds great on this album as he transitions between softer singing and, you know, the previously mentioned air raid siren singing. The instrument production is very nice as the guitars sound crunchy and alive, with some solos still giving me chills after the many times I've heard them, much like the other albums on this list. Especially in The Greater Good of God. This song has to be my favourite from this entire album. The drumming from Nico sounds really hard hitting as he uses the clash cymbals at just the right moments in some songs, like, for example, The Pilgrim. That song just needed the clash cymbal. The bass work on this album by Steve is yet again excellent. In songs like, again, The Greater Good of God and Benjamin Brieg, where the bass is just needed. Although the album might not be for everyone or even every Iron Maiden fan, since many people didn't like it when they used this type of music sound in the X Factor. However, if you are looking for something a bit more darker in atmosphere than the usual Maiden record, and for whatever reason you didn't like Blaze Bayley's vocals, I'm almost certain that this will suffice. At number 8 we have Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. I'm just going to say it, this album is a masterpiece. After a streak of big hits, Iron Maiden took it upon themselves to experiment with this new sound they had developed in the previous album, Somewhere in Time. They decided to then make a concept album on the folklore of the Seventh Son. And it's because of this album I actually even know about this folklore story. The instrument quality is yet again at peak performance with this 80s synth added to them. It makes for a really great sound and it just defines the album. The songwriting here is godlike as they take the stories of the folklore and write them into songs as they were written originally. Bruce's vocals were good as always, but I felt as if he tired himself out at times, like on Infinite Dreams. Other than that though, he sounds just as great as always. And why is it so high if I'm praising it to high heavens as I am? Well, it's Iron Maiden. In my personal opinion, there's never been a bad album like I said. Seventh Son is amazingly crafted. End of story. At number 7 we have Virtual Eleven. Yeah, that's right. The one everyone hates, but I am of the 0.1% that actually likes it. Alright, let me explain myself. I like this album, nothing else much to say really. This album marks the second and last album that features Blaze Bayley as the band's vocalist. This album is hated more than any album that Iron Maiden has ever made. Whereas, I do disagree, I can actually see why people don't like this album. The songwriting is really good, I have to admit, in songs like Future Real, The Klansman, Ostas de Vios Amigos, When Two Worlds Collide, The Educated Fool, and yes, even The Angel and The Gambler. I'm not afraid to admit that I like this song. Yeah, it is a bit too long in it, and it's not in my top 10 Iron Maiden songs, but I don't hear anyone complaining about Run to the Hills or Gangland's repetition of their choruses. I mean, not to say those songs are bad, I'm just saying they do repeat themselves, yet people will say Angel and the Gambler is a bad song. I guess it's all opinion based, like I said. However, the radio edit and music video versions are much better, and I'd say they do the song way more justice than the album version ever did. The only really bad song I can say is Don't Look to the Eyes of a Stranger. I really think the song should have been an instrumental like the Ides of March or Big Aura, since the song has a great guitar riff halfway through. Blaze's vocals sound as good as the X Factor's vocals in my opinion, and by that I mean I think it's good. It feels as if he's really pushing himself to experiment in new areas in songs like When Lightning Strikes Twice or Future Real, and I think it worked out okay for him. Despite what people think of Blaze, I personally think he brought new possibilities to the band when he took over from Bruce, and for that I just gotta commend the man for his efforts. The instrumental production sounds really good and it is an improvement from the X Factor. However, it's not the best that Iron Maiden's ever had. The guitar riffs and solos from Yannick and Dave are excellent, with Angel and the Gambler, When Two Worlds Collide and Future Real being great examples of that. The drumming from Nico McBrain was once again great in songs like When Lightning Strikes Twice to replicate lightning striking when he whacks the crash cymbals, yet again another great example of the crash cymbals. It's a minor detail I can personally appreciate. The bass work from Steve's end was really good for the majority of the album, but it only really stuck out to me on The Klansman and Como Estas Amigos. So all in all, is Virtual Eleven the worst album Iron Maiden has ever made? No, certainly not to me. I think what makes this album a bit hard to digest for many is the experimentation with the band trying to push Blaze to somewhere like Bruce in songs like Angel and the Gambler and When Lightning Strikes Twice. So what makes me like this album is the strong songwriting in Klansman, Future Real and Como Estas Amigos. Along with that, Blaze, his vocals are just dark and definitely not Bruce and should not be compared to Bruce. So would I recommend this album? Yeah, I would. Only if you liked Blaze's vocals on the X Factor. At number 6 we have The Number of the Beast. This album defined who Iron Maiden is. It's this album that had put Iron Maiden on the map as heavy metal legends that they are today. Despite how good Killers was, whenever I talk to anyone about Iron Maiden, they talk to me about this album. And for a very good reason. It marked the entrance of Bruce Dickinson's place as vocalist for Iron Maiden until the Fear of the Dark album, and then for him to return in 1999 on the Ed Hunter tour. The production of this album is on par with the likes of Killers, and by that I think it sounds excellent. Unfortunately, this marked the final album that Clive would drum for, and he did an excellent job on songs like Hallowed Be Thy Name and Run to the Hills. There's times where he just goes from a steady paced rhythm to a fast paced burst of energy, which Run to the Hills definitely benefits from. Adrian and Dave do a bang up job at playing the guitars in songs like the title track and Invaders. They sound so alive for the time and give the songs that energy that Killers had. I love most of the songs in the album apart from some filler tracks like Gangland and 22 Acacia Avenue. The album is a masterpiece, and if you're an Iron Maiden fan, you've most likely already heard it before. If you haven't, then by all means go ahead, listen to it. You need to. It's probably the band's most popular album at this point. I definitely recommend it to newcomers of Iron Maiden. At number 5 we have Power Slave. Power Slave is the album where I believe that Maiden started to become very creative with their albums. And by that I mean making the music sound like something else that hadn't been done before. In this album in particular, it takes more of an Egyptian pyramid theme. And with that, the instruments sound absolutely fantastic with excellent guitar riffs in songs like Big Aura, or Lost for Words, Power Slave, Aces High, and Rime of the Ancient Mariner. Bruce's vocals were yet again excellent, and Aces High, it just instantly convinces you that he is a powerhouse of being a vocalist. I especially love the title track with his voice. He sings in unison to the guitar riffs really well, and it's no wonder that this is a fan favourite to many. The drumming by Nico was great in songs like Big Aura and Power Slave especially. The bass is yet again really well played by Steve in the more silent section of Rime of the Ancient Mariner especially. The sounds of the bass there just brought out that atmosphere of a ghostly ship so well. So Power Slave is most definitely a perfect album almost. It has 2 songs I find to be filler, but like Number of the Beast, they don't bother me at all. Definitely give this album a listen. At number 4 we have Brave New World. After Virtual 11, Blaze and Iron Maiden had parted ways to bring Bruce back to Iron Maiden after high demand and undeserved hatreds towards Blaze. Bruce had agreed, and thus came the Ed Hunter tour. In 2000 they had released this masterpiece, Brave New World. Bruce Dickinson hadn't changed one bit ever since he left to do his own solo career. And when Wicker Man begins, you can just tell that familiar surge of air raid siren power coming from his voice. The band's production has been massively stepped up from Virtual 11. The instruments truly did sound like tools of heavy metal, with crunchy and roaring guitars, powerful hard hitting drums, tight and twangy bass lines, and nice synth thrown in for good measure. The guitar riffs and solos had all 3 Iron Maiden guitarists come together to do some excellently played riffs and solos in songs like Ghost of the Navigator, the title track, and The Nomad, to name a few. The drumming by Nico once again sounds very tense and hard, and Steve's bass work is great again. Brave New World takes everything they learned from the past 2 albums and just used all that progressive experimentation to its fullest advantage here in the album. A truly fantastic album and a fantastic comeback for Bruce. Definitely recommend Brave New World. Number 3 we have The Book of Souls. Bruce's vocals on this album are a lot deeper, much like how they were in A Matter of Life and Death. Along with that, Bruce was diagnosed with a throat cancer tumour, yet he didn't pay much heed and decided to sing anyways. A true trooper indeed. The production of this album is just superb. I love the opening track If Eternity Should Fail so much that I was hooked from the beginning to the end of the album when I first listened to it on YouTube. The album tends to rely on synthesizers a bit, but it's never enough to become annoying at all. They actually introduced Bruce with a piano in The Empire of the Clouds, and it sounds majestic and is just the best closing song they've ever made for an album thus far. The instruments sound great, the best they've ever been in my opinion. The guitars from Yannick, Dave and Adrian all fit well together and are all full of that familiar Maiden energy. The drumming is really good as it adds a great deal to the atmosphere of this new fantasy theme they have going along with the Shaman Eddie and the jungle areas. The bass by Steve Harris is excellent in songs like The Red and the Black, with his bass and outro solo adding quite a bit to the song. In conclusion, I would just have to say the Book of Souls is definitely a modern day masterpiece and a must have for any Iron Maiden fan. And since there were many issues regarding Bruce's throat cancer along the way, only for them to press on and give the middle finger to cancer, I can only commend Bruce for caring about his fans so much. At number 2 we have Somewhere in Time. After the success of Power Slave, Maiden had struck gold in being creative and decided to go all out on developing a new sound for the next album. This would become my favourite album of the 80s, Somewhere in Time. The album has incredible production with synthesizers acting alongside it as a major role for the music, much like Seventh Son. The guitars are godlike and sound amazing. Adrian Smith and Dave both show great talent in pulling off some exceptional solos in songs like Wasted Years and Caught Somewhere in Time. The drumming by Nico is really intense and fast paced to complement the new guitar sound, and in the end it definitely sounded great alongside the synthesizers. The bass lines by Steve were really good in Stranger in a Strange Land and Deja Vu's intro, to name a few. Overall, this album is the peak of Bruce Dickinson's albums. And at number 1, guys, we have The X Factor. Yes, a Blaze Bayley album is my favourite. Why though? Why is a Blaze Bayley album my personal favourite more than that of a Bruce album? I just love the way he sings and how he projects his voice. Even when given the role of being the next vocalist for Iron Maiden, he just pulled through. And whereas he did have incapabilities to sing some of the Bruce material, much like The Trooper and Hallowed Be Thy Name live, take a look at him nowadays. But is this his fault? Hell no, he's baritone. I think that the band should have tuned it down and played just a bit slower to give Blaze some time to catch his breath. Bruce Dickinson and Blaze Bayley are two metal legends that I cannot have enough respect for, and to compare them both is ludicrous. Anyway, rant over. Now the X Factor album. The X Factor was the album that I feel has saved Iron Maiden. At least with Paul, they could have made Number of the Beast with him and it would have had no effect because they weren't that well known at the time. And Fear of the Dark being so successful, it left the band without a singer and the search for a singer intensified. Bruce actually recommended they take Blaze on for an audition. Straight away you can tell this is not the average Iron Maiden album. I mean, if you look at Fear of the Dark, you can tell it's that classic Derek Riggs style of Eddie just being bound to a tree. That wasn't really dark or scary, it just felt like a Halloween type of monster that you would see in a shop or something. Not dissing the artwork, by the way, I'm just saying it doesn't give that much of a dark atmosphere. However, if you look at the X Factor, this here is a dark album. You can obviously tell straight away this is not your average Iron Maiden album because we see a mutilated Eddie, even more so than we normally did usually. Production of the album, what does it sound like? Well, it sounds not as good as Fear of the Dark, I will admit, but it does the job, and it sounds a little bit like the genre goth. And this album could honestly qualify for goth if it wasn't for Man on the Edge and Lord of the Flies. By saying that, obviously Blaze does not sing the same way that Bruce does. He's not a tenor, he does not sing high octane vocals. What does he do instead? He sings in low baritone notes. This is very evident in stuff like Fortunes of War, Look for the Truth and The Edge of Darkness. The way how Yannick and Dave play the guitars was way better than they ever did in No Prayer for the Dying and Fear of the Dark in my opinion. In The Unbeliever, they do such a powerful guitar solo. The drumming by Nico McBrain is also really good, as I feel as if it really adds to that tense atmosphere that the Sign of the Cross has, along with Edge of Darkness. It feels as if everything is just put together so well in this album, and I have heard a lot of people do not like this album because they think it's boring. For me, I think it's so powerful in a sense that Iron Maiden had never explored themselves, and the bass work by Steve Harris is also really good in my opinion. Much like the Red and the Black from the most recent album, Book of Souls, I really think that Blood on the World's Hands benefits quite a bit from the bass intro. So in conclusion, The X Factor is my favourite Iron Maiden album. That's not to shit on the 80s stuff, by the way. I also love those stuff, as you've heard me praise them earlier. It's just that I think this album is, to be honest, up there with the 80s stuff. But if you didn't like this album just because Bruce wasn't on it, please give it another listen. I'm sure you'll find something on this album that you'll like. Not only is this my favourite Iron Maiden album, it's actually my favourite album of all time. And yeah, I know that's a really bold statement, and some of you might be thinking that I'm overstating this to be even better than it is, but I'm sorry, it's just how I feel. This is one of the best comebacks I've ever seen a band do. Blaze Bayley is a great man, and to get all this hate put onto him, it's very undeserved. It's always good to know that Blaze never gave a shit for these haters, and he just continued anyway. If you have a top 10 Iron Maiden albums, then leave it in the comments below and tell me what your favourite is. Anyway guys, that's me, Lenn256i, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Okay, fine, we'll get to Spyro.